how you feel the epidemic of stress exists in today's world.
The CDC tells us they believe 90 to 95% of all diseases, whether it's Alzheimer's, cancer, heart disease, the root cause is stress. They believe the average American spends 90% of every day in fight or flight, which is stress. Why does that exist? I know some of it's done on purpose. What they do is they try to get more viewers on their newscasts, like the evening news, even the weather report or whatever. What they do is they sensationalize. We're going to get a blizzard. You're going to get 20 inches. Bundle up, get all your emergency supplies. You're going to die. And when that adrenaline hit wears off, you're going to tune in to get another hit. So this is the way they get us to come back and back and back. And just listening to it will put you in fight or flight.
Welcome to Healing with Jace. I'm really excited to have today's guest on. And I'll give you an intro about him, but just as always, our goal is to find different ways to heal. Not everything you hear you have to do or agree with, but the more information you have, the more informed you can be to actually heal yourself. And so today, again, I'm really excited to have Lee Albert joining me. Lee is a renowned author, television host, and dedicated therapist and yoga instructor with over 30 years of experience helping individuals to live pain-free lives. His expertise lies in neuromuscular therapy, anatomy, and yoga, which he integrates into his work to empower others to take charge of their well-being. As the author of the notable books such as Live Pain-Free, Eliminate Chronic Pain Without Drugs or Surgery, and Yoga for Pain Relief, A New Approach to an Ancient Practice, Lee has provided valuable insights and practical strategies for those seeking relief from chronic pain. Additionally, he hosts the popular PBS show 3 Steps to Pain-Free Living and Joyful Pain-Free Living, where he shares his knowledge and techniques with a broader audience. Lee's commitment to holistic health and his passion for teaching have significantly impacted the lives of countless individuals from diverse backgrounds. And today, we have Lee with us. Lee, thank you so much for joining us on the show today. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, Jason. Thanks for having me on. This is my passion. I just can't wait to share this because there's so much information out of there. You don't even know what's true anymore.
Sure.
But with 35 years of experience doing this, I've narrowed it down to what works and what doesn't. And that's the final thing. If it works for me, if it works for my clients, it will work for everybody or most everybody anyway. And it's a whole new approach to pain relief. So if, this is perfect for people who are really looking for that natural approach without drugs or surgery. And the beauty of the whole thing is it's not even difficult to do. It doesn't take a long time and anybody can do it at any fitness level. It doesn't matter.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, why don't we start with, a little bit of the introduction, a little bit of the background. I'd love for you to share your journey and what's inspired you to focus on chronic pain and holistic health.
Yeah, well, like a lot of people who get into the pain relief category in this work, it's because I was in a severe car accident about 38 years ago. I came to a stop sign. The guy behind me did not come to a stop sign. He hit me going 60 miles an hour. He never touched the brake. He was fooling around with a kid in the back seat, didn't see traffic stop, and whacked me. To make matters worse, my car was 3 weeks old. That hurt too, but I consider myself lucky. The car I just traded in was a Plymouth Horizon hatchback. If I would have been in that car, I would have been dead. This car saved my life.
Okay.
You want to guess what I was driving?
What were you driving?
Take a guess.
I don't know. I don't know. You'll have to tell me.
All right. I was driving a Volkswagen Jetta.
Okay.
And it did exactly as advertised. My whole trunk, flat as a pancake, front end, flat as a pancake. The middle of the car looked like nothing touched it. So I got out of that car with nothing broken, nothing bleeding, which in itself was a miracle because I thought I was going to die. I saw him coming and there was nothing I could do. I was just stuck there. At the time, there were no airbags, but I did have my seatbelt on. The officer who came to the scene said, if I didn't have my seatbelt on, I would have been ejected through the windshield at 60 miles an hour. It's just basic physics. So this is a public service announcement. If you're not using your seatbelt, you might want to consider doing so.
That's certainly good advice.
Yeah.
And so this accident, led to some injuries, which led you into exploring this practice. Go into that a little bit more.
So what happened was the officer comes, and he goes, "This is a pretty bad wreck. You want to go to the hospital?" I'm thinking, well, I'm shaken up, but nothing's broken, nothing's bleeding. I'm not really in any pain other than just shaken up. I said, "No, I think I'm going to be all right." Well, this guy's looking at me and he's looking at the car and he goes, "You know what? I think you're going to the hospital." He did have a gun. So, so I go to the hospital and I wait 3 hours in the emergency room because, in fact, I'm not an emergency, right? We should treat those guys first. So the doctor looks me over and he goes, he gave me these range of motion tests for my neck and my head, and he's checking for all sorts of things. Everything seemed normal. All my blood work was normal. Everything was normal. He says, "I think you dodged the bullet. I think you're going to be okay." And I was okay. For 3 weeks, I had no symptoms whatsoever. At the end of that 3rd week, I started to get migraine headaches. I had never had a migraine before in my life. And if you've never had a migraine, it's like a headache on steroids. Sometimes you can barely move. And little did I know I was going to have migraines for the next 3 years.
Oof.
Yeah. And to make matters worse, my full-time job was, are you ready? Junior high school band teacher. Which was enough to give you a migraine without this, if you know what I'm saying, right? So I tried everything you could think of. I went all the conventional medical route, physical therapy, the chiropractors. I went all the alternative stuff. I only go to the best healers because, I was a brand new massage therapist at that time. I knew you had to go to the best or you didn't really get results, right? And I went to the best, which meant the most expensive, but it doesn't matter. If you got that kind of pain, you're willing to spend anything to get out of it. Unfortunately, nobody could give me any lasting relief. Sometimes I get short-term relief. Nobody was giving me that long-term relief that I was really seeking. And after 3 years, I had just about given up because I've exhausted just about anything. But life is funny. When it is, when you usually find what you've been looking for so long, it happens when you stop looking so hard. So I had told myself, you know what? I'm not going to look anymore. I'm going to consider pain management. It looks like I'm going to have to live with this the rest of my life. Depressing thought, but I said, I can do it. I'll do it. And 2 days later, this guy comes up to me, one of my friends. He says, I heard about this woman doing this real incredible work. You should go see her. I said, "Oh, yeah, well, what does she do?" "Well, she's a physical therapist." I said, "Well, I love physical therapists. I've seen many, but none of them have been able to help." He goes, "Yeah, it seems she does things a little different. People go once or twice and their pain all goes away." I was thinking, well, that sounds a little too good to be true, but okay, well, where is she? Well, she's in Hartford, Connecticut. Well, at the time, I'm living in Nova Scotia, Canada. So this is not a short trip to get there, right?
No, definitely not.
He kept after me, and then finally I said, "Okay, if you stop bugging me, I'll go see her." So I call her up for an appointment. 6 months to get in to see her. Now, that was disappointing because it meant 6 more months of migraines, but I took it as a good sign. If you got a 6-month waiting list, you're probably pretty good, right? Right. So I go to see her, and, she does the exam like all the PTs do, very thorough, very professional. But this is where strange things started to happen. I just always thought it was strange because I've never seen anything like it. So she puts me on her table. I'm lying face up on the table. She takes her hand and she starts feeling around my neck and shoulder. Very gentle, just like this. I mean, so light it's almost ticklish. It's not hard at all, right? And after doing that for a few minutes, she takes my arm. I'm still lying on my back, and she moves it very slowly, and she puts it in a position like this. And I'm laying on my back, and I think, well, this is strange. What is she doing? Because I don't feel anything. And I know she's not doing range of motion tests because we did those already, and that's not the way you do them anyway. And she holds me there for a minute or two, and she slowly moves my arm back like that. And she feels around the tissue again. Okay. Then she takes my head and very gently moves it backward like this. So my chin's up, I'm lying on my back, and she's holding it and holding it. And I'm thinking to myself, does she realize she's my last resort? I don't have a plan B here. And I don't think we're off to a very good start because as far as I can see, she's not doing anything, right?
Right.
Well, much to my chagrin, this goes on for the next 40 minutes, just putting me in different positions. And at the end of 40 minutes, she says, you know what? I think we got it. I think your migraines will be gone. And I go, really? Because I didn't feel anything. I mean, really, I didn't feel anything, really. It was so gentle and I had no idea what she was doing, right? And I said, I don't think it's going to go away. I don't think that's going to do it. She says, I'm pretty sure it's going to happen. I'm not one to argue because life will tell us down the road anyway.
Right.
So I said, all right, I'll let you know in 3 or 4 weeks what's going to happen. So week goes by, no migraine. Okay, well, that can happen anyway. I'm sure it was nothing she did. 2 weeks, no migraine. A little unusual. 3 weeks, no migraine. When it gets to that 4th week, no migraine, I got on the phone and I called her. I said, what did you do to me? I don't have any migraine. She says, well, I know, I told you. She said, I did positional therapy on you. I said, can you tell me a little bit about that? She was busy, but she gave me the Cliff Note version. I said, that actually makes sense to me. I said, I'm a therapist. Can I learn this? I want to help others like you help me. She said, oh, yeah, you can learn it. Anybody can learn it. I said, anybody? She says, if they know the difference between an arm and a leg, they're pretty much good to go.
All right.
Low bar. So I said, great. She says, there's a class coming up. It's a weekend class. Go take it. I took it. I've been using it ever since.
Wow.
Now, what I did, Jace, because as good as her technique was, you needed a therapist to do it. That wasn't good enough for me. I wanted to teach people how to do it for themselves. So I took what she did, added a few things to it, and made a whole wellness plan and evaluation system where people can do this to themselves and be their own therapist and get themselves out of most of their aches and pains.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's incredible. You've actually worked with me a little bit in doing this IPT.
Yeah.
And it's incredible that, and I think most of us go through this. You go through pain, you accept it for a certain amount of time, but at a certain point, enough is enough. And I really do want to go into that, into chronic pain and its impact that it has.
Yeah.
How would you define chronic pain and why do you think that it is such a widespread issue today?
Right. So chronic pain can have many different sources, the way it comes to us, for sure. But let's start with the economic impacts here. So this was a study done just before COVID here, I guess 2020, maybe 2019. And, when I ask people how much they think we spend in this country on chronic pain every year, everybody underestimates it by a tremendous amount, And I know because I told you.
Sure.
But it's over $650 billion every single year just on chronic pain alone. And that's what goes through insurance. What doesn't go through insurance is coming out of your pocket and loss of work. And that's a tremendous number. And that does not take into account acute pain. And I couldn't find statistics that put the two together, but I'm willing to bet if there was, we'd be over $1 trillion every year.
Yeah.
Now, the overwhelming majority of chronic pain comes from a muscular imbalance somewhere inside the body. And because what most people are calling the cause of pain is actually the symptoms of pain. And this is where we have to make a big distinction. So that $635 billion that we spend, $100 billion of that is spent on low back pain alone. Okay? So it's one of the most common reasons you go see a doctor today, low back pain. Now go back to the 50s when I was born. One of the most common reasons you'd see a doctor in the 50s was low back pain. So tell me, how can it be in one of the most medically advanced countries in the world, this is still one of the number one complaints? And the answer is, when you get treated for your low back pain and many other conditions, you're typically being treated for the symptoms of low back pain, which of course is well and good. We want to get rid of the symptoms. We want to feel better soon. But until you get to the root cause, it's always going to keep coming back. And this problem is going to get worse and worse every year as it keeps doing, and the statistics all back that up.
Yeah, certainly.
Right. Yeah.
It's interesting because before I knew I had a tumor in my chest, I was having back pain from said tumor.
Yes.
And when I went in, they were very quick to address my back pain through the symptom, get me the medication to have it go away in hopes that it would heal. And it evidently never did.
Right.
What do you believe about chronic pain is often misunderstood or misdiagnosed in traditional medical settings?
Yeah. So typically, I hear this all the time. Oh, the root cause of your pain is inflammation. And the way I look at it, inflammation is in all this chronic pain. It's still a symptom, or they say, oh, your pain is from your herniated disc or your bulging disc pressing on your nerve, which I also look at as a symptom of something else. In other words, what's caused that inflammation? What's causing that bulging disc? We got to get right to what's doing it. And it's almost always what we call a muscle imbalance.
Okay. It certainly makes sense again.
Right.
And oftentimes when people experience this level of muscle imbalance, what do you find to be the solution? Because I know a lot of us like to go in, we like to work out, we like to lift heavy, but that can lead to additional problems. What is the cause of the muscle imbalance?
Yeah. So it's a cause of the muscle imbalance is using some muscles more than other muscles. And we all do that in our everyday life. So muscle imbalances are very common and everybody's going to have them. It's just a matter of degree. So I think maybe what I should do is explain exactly what a muscle imbalance is, and then we'll show you the solution for it, which is elegantly simple and does not take a rocket scientist to understand. Okay. So what you need to know is, we have over 650 skeletal muscles in the body. So there's a lot of them. But the key to all of this is knowing that muscles typically work in pairs. And if you don't address the pair, that's where you're going to go wrong. So most therapists or doctors will look at the muscle that's sore and address that. But it always works in pairs. So the one that hurts is typically where your symptom is, and the cause is on the other side where it doesn't hurt. So if you don't get the other side where it doesn't hurt, you never get to the cause. And then everything comes spiraling back. So the quickest example I could give is, through the chest here. So we should all kind of look like this through the chest, right? Of course, we all look like this because we're a bent forward society. We spend all our time bent forward. So you can clearly see when I'm like this and then I slouch, my chest muscles, they go shorter, right? You can see them get closer. But the opposite pair is between my shoulder blades. And when I do that, that muscle gets pulled longer, but it's not loose. It's like an overstretched rubber band. So I'll invite you and maybe the audience here, if you want to do an experiment on yourself, give me a good slump like this. Take 2 fingers, poke your chest muscle fairly hard. Now poke the muscles between your shoulder blades fairly hard.
Really tight.
Really tight in the back, right?
Yes.
And that's what almost everybody's going to say. For some, it could be their chest muscles. For most, it's going to be back here. And when that gets really tight, what do? You stretch it because you think, well, it's tight. I should stretch it. So we do something like this, or we do something like this, and we stretch it out. And it makes it feel better because any muscle that you stretch, whether it's long muscle or short muscle, it's going to feel better because you put more blood and oxygen in it. But if you do this, stretch it out, you will treat your symptom and you will feel better. But you made the cause worse. By doing this, you see I made my chest muscles even shorter and the muscles between my shoulder blades even longer. So in the long run, even though I made myself feel better, I made the whole situation worse.
Wow. I mean, it's a common misconception, clearly. I mean, that's what I would do by default. If something's hurting, I want to stretch that out.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. Moving into the solution for that, I mean, we were talking earlier about this incredible discovery of IPT, and you've added your own references to it.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit more about what is IPT? How does it address pain differently than the traditional treatments, than the traditional stretches?
Right. So, and the I stands for integrated. So it's integrated positional therapy. So remember my story, we were doing positions. So that's the positional therapy part because that will help loosen muscles totally and start to bring them back into balance. But we need it more to make it stay that way. So in other words, she did it once and that's all I needed because mine was from a one-time incident. Most people have to do a little bit of muscle training to bring your muscles back into balance to make it stay. Because most people's pain is from what they're doing every single day.
Right.
And so it has to be, so it needs to be trained. So what we really need to do is show people how to bring muscle pairs back into balance. And it's very simple. So the first thing we do, we identify if the muscle pair, which one is short, which one's long. I'll do a demo in just a minute. And then if the muscle's too short, we're obviously going to stretch it, which makes sense. But if it's too long, we'll strengthen it. Because when you strengthen a muscle, you make it shorter. And it seems like that's too easy and it shouldn't work that way. But once I do the demos, it works like every single time on people.
Huh.
Right.
Speaking of kind of walking through it, what can you walk us through, verbally, what a typical IPT session looks like for somebody that might say, never heard of that, I'm kind of scared of it, but I want to try it. What does the session look like?
Yeah, well, it's a very gentle session for sure because forcing muscles doesn't usually work. Okay, you can get some results like that. I'm trained to deep tissue massage and other things. I can get results, but this is going to be more long term. So for a session, you would we do an evaluation first. So I look at the body, and I'm going to see where you're out of balance. And the first thing I'm going to look at is your hips. So that's the foundation. So just like a house, if the foundation of a house goes crooked, the whole house is crooked. If your hips are crooked, your whole body is crooked. So because there's so many muscles in the body, we can't correct them all. But if I correct the big ones, the little ones go along for the ride. So if we get your basement fixed, your hips, so to speak, fixed by getting them straight, and that's not difficult, we can get them back. They won't stay, though, until you do the little bit of homework to make them stay, right?
Right.
We get them back. You start getting better. I go through the body. We do that. I'll do some upper body stuff, and depending on what you complained of coming in, I'll release those muscles, and then I will give you a plan to take home. We call the wellness plan that you can do. And this is not a big script. It'll take you maybe 20 minutes a day, which you can spread out throughout the day, of just strengthening certain muscles and stretching certain muscles, and then being aware of certain other tips. So, we will give tips on stress reduction and maybe some on hydration for sure. We'll give some tips and, whatever I think you may need, because all these things affect how your muscles are responding in your body.
Absolutely. It was incredible when we'd first met. I thought for my entire life that one leg was longer than the other.
Right.
And you looked at me and you said, you have an imbalance here. Why don't we just try something real quick? So we did a session, and in a matter of, I think it was 5 minutes, my legs were the same length. Yeah. And it blew my mind.
Yeah.
And you were able to recognize that because of your many years of practice. Right. But how can somebody listening identify whether they have a level of muscle imbalance that contributes to their pain?
If in doubt, just say, yes, you do. Because almost everybody has it. When you're really young, you maybe don't have it. But as you get older, it's not because you're older you get it. Because you've done the same things more and more, you develop that imbalance. And the imbalance is very similar for almost all people. And because everybody thinks their muscle imbalances are unique, and they are to a very small degree. But overall, most of us have the same imbalances because we all do the same things. We sit, we walk, we're over computers, we drive. So in other words, we're bent forward most of our lives, which means most of the muscles on the front side of the body become short, which means the muscles on the back side of the body become overstretched and long, except for the calves, which are short. So people get a misconception. They think that every muscle in the body that feels tight is short. And of course, that's impossible. Because if one is short, the other has to be long. It can't, there's no other way it could happen. So this is why when a person tells me, well, this muscle's tight, that doesn't give me enough information. Because if a muscle's short, we obviously know that's tight. But that overstretched muscle is like that overstretched rubber band. If you visualize that, you can clearly see it's tight as well. As a matter of fact, I've learned that muscles that are overstretched feel much tighter and hurt more than muscles that are too short.
When you think of muscles and you think of people needing to stretch, first thing I think of, yoga. That's the first thing I go to. And from some of our conversations, we've talked about how there's a lot of actually practices within yoga that aren't necessarily the best, especially talking about what you're saying with overstretching things.
Yes.
So you have this term you shared with me, beyond yoga, that you're developing or you've learned about or you're teaching.
Yeah.
Could you tell me more about what is beyond yoga?
Yeah. So beyond yoga is looking at, the poses in a little different way. But first of all, let's just say of yoga, there's 8 different categories of the limbs of yoga. We're talking about the asana part, which is the stretching part, basically. Okay. So because otherwise yoga is a very big subject. And I think some of the other things like the meditation and the breathing are probably more valuable even.
Sure.
But we'll just talk about the stretching part right here.
Okay.
So the problem becomes, everybody's doing these stretches without understanding the way muscles work. So in other words, I'm a yoga teacher. I've been a yoga teacher for over 20 years. I've worked at yoga centers. I can't tell you how many yoga injuries I've treated. And it's not because of yoga. It's always user error because they don't understand. You can't blame the tool for user error, right? Yoga is just a tool. And all the poses, all the stretches we do all have a good function. But if you don't know what that function is, you can't use it to its best advantage. So when I ask my clients, what pose, what stretch were you doing when you got injured? 95% of them identified a stretch they were doing that was on an overstretched muscle. In other words, you hardly ever get hurt or feel bad stretching a muscle that's short. But as I just told you a minute ago, since most of the muscles on the backside of the body are long, and in yoga, we spent most of our time bending forward, we're stretching muscles that are too long.
So with beyond yoga, you take an alternative approach.
So we take that alternative approach now. That is, I wouldn't even call it an alternative approach. Let's say it's a more informed approach, because if we know muscles on the backside of the body are are long, why would we wouldn't stretch them? You see, I've taught anatomy in some yoga teacher trainings, and I follow the Yoga Alliance guidelines of what they want me to teach. But the truth is, if you knew all the names of the muscles, if you knew all their actions, if you knew where they all were and what they did, it still wouldn't make you a better teacher because it doesn't tell you what you need to do. But if you knew which muscles were too long or too short, now that's something you can take action on. You would only stretch short muscles at the beginning for a few months until your body comes into balance. Then we will stretch both sides equally because we would be in balance. So yoga could fix everything we had if we took a more informed approach to it.
It's great that you're creating a more informed approach because a lot of people blindly dive into solutions. Maybe they even do research it, but they don't necessarily understand what they're fully doing. Right. One reason I personally love yoga, the breath work, a lot of that is because there is a larger issue also outside of just the physical. There is this, as you've expressed, this epidemic of stress that exists. And yoga is a tool that a lot of people use. But I want to talk about that. How do you feel? I guess it's first talk about how you feel the epidemic of stress exists in today's world.
Yeah. And it does exist, and it's a big one. And this is confirmed by the CDC as well and many other studies. So first of all, the CDC tells us they believe 90 to 95% of all diseases, whether it's Alzheimer's, cancer, heart disease, diabetes, no matter 90 to 95%, the root cause is stress. And in other studies, people have said they believe the average American spends 90% of every day in fight or flight, which is stress. Now, and why does that exist? I know some of it's done on purpose. I've seen studies and I've talked to people who I know what they do is they try to get more viewers on their newscasts, like the evening news, even the weather report or whatever. What they do is they sensationalize it. Even the weather. Like when I was growing up, I grew up in Chicago. We're going to get a blizzard. We're going to get 20 inches. Okay, get your shovel and wait till tomorrow. Get your parka ready.
Right.
Now it's oh my God, we're going to get 20 inches. It'll be snowmageddon. Go out and get enough food for a month. Bundle up, get all your emergency supplies, and it's, you're going to die.
Right.
And what they do, because it's going to give you an adrenaline rush. And when that adrenaline hit wears off, you're going to tune in to get another hit. So this is the way they get us to come back and back and back, and they do it on the news as well. But all news is bad news pretty much, in the mainstream. And just listening to it will put you in fight or flight.
It makes sense. I'm addicted. I'm guilty of it.
Yeah.
You get a emotional response to any sort of news or anything you watch. I almost can't stop myself from going back.
It's true because it becomes an addiction.
It certainly does.
Yeah.
And it sounds like a lot of these practices too of learning to calm your body help. My business partner, Jamie, has shared with me this philosophy that I love where he says, don't ever sprint. If you don't need to sprint, you don't need to. And from what it sounds like, you're saying kind of this mental sprint that we're comparing it to, people will sprint and they panic and it creates this fight or flight. How does that level of stress where they're constantly in it, you said 90%, I believe, at the time, how does that lead to chronic pain or other illness?
Yeah, so it leads to chronic pain and chronic disease. So let me explain it this way. So I got a very clear way to explain it. It really hits home when we talk about this subject. So any organism, whether it's a single-celled amoeba or a trillion-celled human being, any organism can only be in one of two states at any single time. You're either in fight or flight, which we call stress, or you're in rest and digest, which we also call heal and growth. We should be in heal and growth most of our lives in order to thrive and be free from pain and disease. We're not. Okay, so no organism can survive long periods of being in fight or flight. So when you're in fight or flight, you're making over 500 chemicals in your body, which are very beneficial if a bear is chasing you, because it's going to change your whole physiology, and it happens immediately. And the body shuts down different systems. It shuts down immune system, digestion, and a whole bunch of things because it takes those resources and sends it into the fight or flight response. So you have a better chance of surviving. And that's great if it's for a short period of time. And then you go back into rest and digest, but that's not happening. We're staying in it. Now, some people are, there's high levels of fight and flight and low levels. And when people are in low, they go, I'm not really in stress. I feel pretty good. But I'll give you the secret. It's easy to tell. I can tell every single time. It's real simple. But let me give you the solution for this here. So we we're in fight or flight, and we're in it for long periods of time. And if we get a little better, and then the news comes on, or if social feed gives us some bad whatever, and we jump into it, and it's over and over and over. And remember, when you're in fight or flight, you're making adrenaline to run. You're not making melatonin to sleep. And then we become sleep deprived, which leads to even more pain and disease. So the preferred state we should be in, and the ancient yogis knew this because they did it with their practices of pranayama breathing and meditation, is to be in rest and digest, heal and growth. When you're in this state, and again, you can do it, you can flip into it immediately, very quickly, by changing thought patterns. You will make 1,100 beneficial chemicals that will design to not only heal your body at a very profound level, it'll boost your immune system by a factor of over 1,000, by the way. Pretty huge, right? With all the diseases we got going on. It also produces the chemicals of joy, happiness, and bliss, which we know as oxytocin, endorphins, serotonin, et cetera, et cetera. So when the ancient yogis would do their practices of meditation and breathing, they didn't have signs. So they reported what they felt. Oh, I feel bliss. I feel one with God. I feel one with the universe. I feel elation. That's what were they feeling with those chemicals? Because those practices that are now backed by science 100%, nobody disputes that the breathing meditation, which I can give you today, it's very simple and very easy to do, will bring anybody out of fight or flight and into rest and digest in 10 minutes with just a little practice.
It's important. It's really important to know. I can tell you just my own experience. I felt like I grew up in a world of a lot of stress, and there's more screens to look at, which there's more media to pay attention to, which can create more of those responses and more of that level of stress.
It's true.
And it makes sense that it correlates to these higher levels of anxiety and depression and so on and so forth in younger people. It is really challenging. So I'm really glad that we're talking about this. And also, a lot of people do tend to look at it and say, how is breathing really going to help me? You know, how is it going to do it? But from what you're expressing, when you look at the science, breathing can release a lot of those healing chemicals.
Yeah. Well, let me give you my little hint how I can always tell if you're in fight or flight, because that has to do with breathing.
Okay.
All I have to do is look at a person. And if you're breathing in your chest, you're in fight or flight. If your breath goes down into your belly, you're not. And the reason that is, so if I've taught groups of doctors and nurses, I ask this question because they know, they're taught. I say, you know what the average breath rate is in this country? How many breaths per minute do the average person breathe? And it's 12 to 22 is the answer, which means, and it's a bell curve, which means the average person is breathing around 16, 17 breaths per minute. But the science tells us anything over 10 breaths a minute, you're probably in fight or flight. So when we can bring that breath rate down, and if you're chest breathing, you cannot get it below 10. You have to bring it all the way down. You slow your breath rate. You'll kick in your nice, calm nervous system to come in there, and you will change the chemicals in your body very, very quickly.
That's incredible. It really is. How can somebody tell, you know, if they're in the middle of their day, is it to look for that chest breathing, or is there another way to really look at it?
Yeah, that's
the best
way.
Did you look at your smartwatch?
Yeah, well, you can look at your smartwatch, and that can give you some indications for sure. But the best is to check in with yourself. The biggest smartwatch we have is inside of us. The tech is good. I love tech. It helps. It pales in comparison to the tech that's inside of us. Right. So these little tips I'm giving you about the breathing, and I'm going to add a meditation piece to this. These are all what we call biohacks.
Right.
But the ancient yogis knew them, so it's actually nothing new.
Sure.
You know, this is all stuff that's been around for ages, and science has finally caught up and confirmed it. So it's these biohacks. So if I tell people, use your tech, let it buzz or set an alarm for every hour. It's a check-in. And if you feel you're breathing here, or you're holding your breath and you're not breathing, take 3 slow belly breaths and reset your clock, so to speak.
We've talked a lot about different modes of healing and health practices, and a lot of them are great. What would you say are your top 5 health practices for living a healthier and more pain-free life?
Yeah. Well, the number one is the breathing meditation. So this would be an ideal time to tell you about this. So first of all, I want you to think of the word meditation and medication. One letter in the difference. They both come from the same Latin word meaning to heal or to make whole. With medication, you're putting chemicals in your body in the hopes of feeling better. And sometimes you do, and sometimes you don't. With meditation, you're going to flip yourself into the rest and digest mode, where you'll be making 1,100 beneficial healing chemicals that will definitely make you feel better. And the beauty is they're all bioidentical because you make them.
Okay.
And all we have to do is do this simple breathing meditation. I do this one. This is, no matter what's going on in my life, this makes everything better.
Meditation, number 1. Easily.
Breathing meditation.
Breathing meditation.
Yeah, so let me explain it to you. It's very simple. And this is confirmed by science, and nobody has refuted it because it's been duplicated again and again and again. Works every single time. I'll tell you the breathing part, then I'll tell you the meditation part. The breathing part is you breathe in through the nose for 4. Hold for 4. And out for 8. And you just repeat it over and over and over. So that does 2 things. One is, and this is all things that have to happen for your nervous system to really come down. Your exhale needs to be longer than your inhale, which we just did. And you need to get your breath rate below 10. So that breathing pattern effectively puts you at 4 to 6 breaths a minute, depending on how fast you're counting.
And it's absolutely free.
Absolutely free. Costs you nothing.
Right.
Now, the scientists say it works every single time, unless, this is why we need the meditation part. You're doing your breath and your mind wanders to your problems or the world's problems, which of course, you know, it's going to.
Right.
Because we're really not even control. We're not in control of what we think. we are being told what to think almost our whole lives, starting in school, right? So we need a focal point to bring it back. So my definition of meditation is narrowing our focus to something that does not cause a fight or flight response. So there's many ways you can do it. What I do, I count numbers in my head. 1, 2, 3, 4, then I hold 1. And when my mind wanders, I bring it back. Other people count sheep.
Right.
Doesn't matter. Some people, because if you have a little emotional connection to what you're visualizing, it's easier to keep the connection. They visualize their pet. 1, 2. Or a religious symbol. And it doesn't matter what the symbol is as long as you have a connection to it.
So it's a concentration with the breath
It's
work.
a concentration.
Okay.
And the more you bring your mind back, the more it stops wandering. So, the first month or 2 I did it, it was nice and relaxed. I didn't feel much. By the 3rd month, I started feeling those 1,100 chemicals of joy, happiness, and bliss. And I don't stop at 10 minutes because I feel so good. I don't want to stop. And I know this is our birthright. And this is what we all deserve. This is what we can all work towards. It costs nothing. It can be done in bed even.
Sure.
Yeah.
You have plenty of time when you're sick to be in that state where you are bedridden, and instead of distracting yourselves, putting yourself in that fight or flight, probably best to do this.
Exactly, yeah.
I'm glad that we focused on that. I think it's incredibly important.
Yeah.
What would be your other top 4 health practices for living a happy and healthy life?
Yeah, and these are, that's always my number 1. The next 4 are in no particular order, but they're all important. The next one is movement of some kind. We are a sedentary society, and it's taking years and years off our life. So a bunch of things happen. So when you start to move, one of the first things that's going to happen is your lymph system's going to start to move. So your lymph system is like, just to put it in simple terms, is like the body's sewer system. It takes the garbage and the junk out of our body, right? Now, unlike our blood system, the lymph system does not have a pump. The only way it moves is if you move. So the more sedentary you become, the less your garbage, your sewer system is moving to get rid of that sludge. And then it builds up and you get all sorts of diseases, And it could be almost anything because pathogens love to live in that sludge.
Great to hear that we've combined the 2 practices. I mean, beyond yoga in general, it is that combination of the breath work, the mind, and the movement.
Exactly. So you get that movement going. So the other things, and the studies show that as little as 7,000 steps a day, it seems like a lot, but it's really not because it's spread out through the day. It's like 30 or 40 minutes of walking. People who do that, there's a 30 to 40% reduction in all death mortality. Just by 30 to 40 minutes of walking movement a day.
I think a big issue is people think when you talk about movement or exercise, they go, I need to make sure that I'm sprinting. I'm sweating, I'm lifting, I'm doing this. But something so simple can make the world of a difference.
Yeah. So that's why, when I teach, I tell them, don't think of it as exercise, think of it as movement, because it can be anything but move your body. It's going to make such a big difference. And the last piece is if you don't move, your muscles and your bones atrophy. Because the body doesn't send resources to your muscles and bones if you don't use them. Because, if you go to the gym and you work real hard with weights, your body's going to send resources. They're going to get bigger. If you sit around and do nothing, they're going to atrophy. And you can see it with your muscles, but it happens to your bones too. This is why so many people have osteoporosis. It's not lack of calcium. We have tons of calcium in our body. It's that the body doesn't take it up because it says, I don't need calcium for these bones. They're not using them. Why should I waste all this? We'll give it when it needs it. So move. 30 to 40 minutes a day. Come on.
It's nothing. We can all fit it in. You can even break it up.
We'll park farther away from the grocery store. Anything. Little tricks,
Sure.
Anything you want to do.
All right. So after movement, what comes next?
Yeah. So, and again, no particular order, but hydration is so important. And, people ask me, well, how much should I drink? The standard ones are, you should drink 8 glasses, which is, 64 ounces. Or other people say half your body weight in ounces, And there's some validity to that. But what I found is it really doesn't matter how much you drink, it's how much you absorb. So if you're drinking tap water, chances are you're not getting enough electrolytes in that water to really absorb it. So electrolytes are certain minerals, and it's mostly the potassium-sodium balance. And of course there's drinks for that, like Gatorade and that, which I don't recommend because of all the stuff in it.
Right.
But nature's form of Gatorade is coconut water. You'll get all the electrolytes you want. So if you add a little bit of coconut water to your regular water, and maybe just a little bit of sea salt or Himalayan pink salt, which has all the minerals, now you're going to get enough minerals in your body so your cells can take in the water you actually drink. And without it, muscles ache more. So many diseases start to happen. The brain gets foggy. The lymph doesn't move as well. The joints get achy because most of the synovial fluid is actually water. Just so many diseases happen from lack of water. And if you're just down 2% of what you should be, you get all sorts of symptoms.
I know I'm guilty of not drinking enough water. I have been. And when you think about you go weeks sometimes without drinking. Maybe you drink the right amount of water 1 or 2 days during that week. And it makes perfect sense that when you do that for a long period of time, you're not hydrated enough. It sounds so simple. We've heard it from our parents. Make sure you're drinking enough water, but we don't do it.
Yeah.
And I can also tell you when I was getting chemo treatment, the days that I was the most dehydrated were the days that my body hurt the most. And all it took was for me to hydrate for my body to just calm back down.
Exactly.
So it's powerful, and people neglect it, I think, often.
When people have a little bit too much to drink the night before, that's dehydration the next morning.
Right.
That's why that hurts so bad. One of the number one things that'll give you a headache is dehydration.
Sure.
Yeah.
All right. So after hydration, there's more. What's next?
Yeah. So one of the big things is, we talked about muscle imbalances in the beginning, causes so many aches and pains. All that money was spent on it. And it's what I've discovered is I firmly believe that 65% of all the pain I've treated in my 30 to 35 years of clinical work came from the way a person sat in their chair. So I always recommend using a lumbar support, something you can put in your back that will keep you in this position. Because, people tell you to sit up straight and push your chin in. And of course, that's all correct,
right?
But it's impossible to do for any length of time, right? So it doesn't work. So we need a prop. So and I found the lumbar supports that are built into our chairs, or the ones you can buy, are actually not big enough for most people. So I used to use a little travel pillow. I spent $4 or $5 on it. It's something you can roll up and you adjust, and you put it in your back. And I keep one in my car, and I keep one at my computer, the two places I sit the longest. And so, when you see old people all bent over like this, that's not from being old. That's from practicing it. Don't practice it. Practice this. So, I'm 73. I'm straight because I practice it. It's not hard. And, if the pillow's in my car, I'm going to use it.
Right.
It's very simple. So on my website, I got a free video showing you exactly how to do that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then there's one more after lumbar support.
Yeah. So what I'm going to recommend here is, and this kind of goes back to the meditation piece, but it's a little shorter, a little easier. It's something I call happy thoughts. Okay. And it makes such a difference. So the brain can change like this. The brain makes chemicals based like that. If you think a sad thought, you're going to make those chemicals of survival. You think a happy thought, you're going to make the chemicals of healing and joy and bliss. And it's just by a thought. So, people always want to be happy. They wake up and they go, oh man, I hope I'm going to be happy today. No, it doesn't work that way. You have to be happy on purpose. Why wouldn't you be happy on purpose? So it's not hard. So I say, again, let's use our technology. Set your phone to buzz every hour, every 2 hours, and take 30 seconds and think a happy thought. It changes your brain chemistry like that, which then changes everything else. The other thing that you can do is fake a smile. There's science on this. The study's been done. You're having a really bad day. You can't even think a happy thought. Fake your smile, really stupid, because the body doesn't know the difference. As soon as those corners go up, it thinks something's good's going to happen. It starts to flip the chemicals in your brain. Science has proven that works. Or the surest way, this is my favorite. This is my absolute favorite. Because, we're all in this together. We're not a bunch of individuals. We need to really work together and really come together as a family, because we're one big human family. But this is the one that works every single time without fail. The surest and quickest and easiest way to make yourself happy is to make somebody else happy. As soon as you do, you will be happy. I guarantee you will get that feeling, and it's the best feeling in the world. And it doesn't have to be anything big. It's just like smile at somebody, compliment somebody, make some cookies for somebody, let somebody in traffic, anything, but do it for them, right? You make somebody else happy, you will be happy.
Certainly. It sounds like, all these habits are good. They're great for your mental health, but you're literally medicating yourself through your own body by doing these things.
Yeah.
And you can look at it that way to do them or vice versa, but there's such a ripple effect, for yourself and for the other people around you.
Yeah. And that's just it. Most of us are going on automatic pilot. Let's live a conscious life where we're making conscious decisions of what we really want to do. So that's why these little reminders with our tech to remind us to do it until we can actually break free of that. And let's do what we want to do, not what everybody else wants us to do.
You've talked to me a lot about, again, all these different ways in which we can heal. And I think for a lot of people, they might say, although it's easy, I don't have time for this, or exactly that, I don't have time for this.
Yeah.
You talked to me about developing a plan. Why did you want me to bring this up? What is, in your mind, developing the right plan?
Yeah. So it's all about the plan, because most people never get better, even though they know these little tidbits. If you don't have a plan, how can you do it? So, I actually, I have a little PDF on my website called Living Health, and it's got a plan. It's a 3-month plan with charts where you can keep track of these categories we just talked about, as a matter of fact. Because when there's charts, well, now you're kind of accountable, because you can see it. You can say, oh man, I didn't do that for a week, whatever. And that's okay, because you're learning, right? You're learning. But the plan is the key. If you got a plan that somebody's giving you, and we make it easy. So there's nothing here. So the muscle balance exercise I give, you could put that into your day while you're doing other things. I do some of mine. I'm standing in line at the grocery store. I'm balancing some muscles while I'm doing it right in line, I can do some when I'm driving. The breathing I can do when I'm driving, anything can be done. The water's easy. Get a bottle that has 32 ounces measured on it and carry it with you. Now you can see how much you're doing. You go, oh my God, it's the end of the day. I drank 4 ounces. That's okay. Don't beat yourself up. Now you got to do better the next day, right? Once you got a plan and you can see it coming, it will flip your life around. So life is busy. I get it. I'm super busy. I don't have time for any of that, but I do every bit of it because I build it in with other things in my life.
It's great what you're doing. You're helping a lot of people. And as you said, that's the best way to release a lot of these chemicals.
Totally.
With the over 30 years of experience that you have, what changes have you seen in how people approach chronic pain and wellness overall?
Yeah. So what I've noticed is people are getting, and even some doctors, because I've taught some groups of doctors, they're getting disillusioned with the traditional medication for pain. And I'm not against it. Don't get me wrong, because, I had a kidney stone. I wanted a shot. I wanted it now, because sometimes you just need that. But it's not the long-term solution. I had to get rid of the stone. That's the solution. The long-term solution for our pain and our health problems, because we're treating symptoms. Our medical system treats symptoms. And again, I'm not against that, because you want to get rid of your symptoms. But more people are seeing treating symptoms is we got to go beyond treating symptoms to treating the person. It needs to be more preventative and a more holistic approach. That's not putting chemicals that can have, some long-term side effects in our body here. More and more people want it. They clamor for it. So what I've noticed in these 30 years, I get more and more compliance from my clients because they want this approach. Yes, the pill or whatever is a lot easier, but if it's not working, it's not really easier, because now you're still living with your pain.
Right. Treat the root cause.
Treat the cause.
Treat the root cause. Yeah. Well, you've done incredible work, and you've helped so many people. I mean, thousands, and probably the ripple effect has led to millions. What is next for you? Do you have any upcoming projects or books you want to talk about or shows that you're excited about doing?
Oh, I sure do, Jace. I mean, I got a big one coming up, and it came out of the blue. I didn't even plan it, but I got I've been doing my positional therapy training programs in person only, which is great. I got one coming up in Massachusetts in June of this year, 2025. But for the first time ever, I'm partnering with Tal Ben Shahar, which is also a big name in the industry, and we are going to do a online training.
Okay.
And I film it in just a few weeks from now. I'll be filming it, and we hope to release it by spring or early summer. So now I'll be able to reach people around the world because, in life, trainings are great, and I love doing it, and I'll always do them. But you can only get so many people.
Sure.
So the more people we can get trained is because once you learn how to do it, you can teach your family how to do it. You can teach your neighbors how to do it. If we all learn these techniques and how to be pain-free, we can all do it. So that's my baby right now, and I'm so excited about it. It's going to be over the top good. And there's a yoga component in it where we're going to teach people how to do pain-free yoga.
That's great.
Yeah.
And in terms of the stuff you've already done, where can people find the books you've written, learn more about IPT, or watch any of your PBS shows?
Yeah. So I have 2 books out, and they both are doing quite well. And they're both on Amazon, so that's the best place to get them.
Sure.
Live pain-free without drugs or surgery, and one's yoga for pain relief. Easy to read. I took out the big words because I wasn't writing them for clinicians. I was writing them for the everyday person. All sorts of good tips and ideas. A lot of the stuff we discussed is in there. So those books are great resources for sure.
Sure.
If you want to see my PBS show, they play whenever PBS wants.
Right.
But on the resource page, I have one of my PBS shows right at the bottom. I think it's 3 Steps to Pain-Free Living. You can go and watch it. You get all sorts of good tips there. You'll see my demos. You'll see exactly how IPT works, and it's totally amazing. Also on my resource page, I have some radio interviews and other things, and so you can see how the whole technique works, and it is really amazing. But to get the most thing for your overall health, I have a PDF like I talked about just a little while ago. It's called Living Health. You can download it immediately to start, and it's got 5 categories, including a little bit of nutrition, but not changing your diet, just overall tips that anybody can do to lower inflammation, and it applies to everybody,
I'll put links to everything too in the description for anybody that's listening, wants to check these things out. Make sure to check the notes of the show. How can somebody connect with you if they said, I want to learn more or work with you directly?
Yeah, so the best way is to email me.
Okay.
For sure. And email me right through my website.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
I'll put the link as well for that.
Yeah.
And my last question for you would be, if you could leave those listening with one key takeaway about chronic pain and healing and wellness, what would that be?
Yeah. So, and this often surprises people when I say this, but I firmly believe all healing, I used to say all healing begins in the mind. I've modified that. All healing begins in the heart, which affects the mind, which affects the body. It all comes down to here. I'm going to get emotional, but that's okay. Because emotion, we're taught, especially if you're men in this country, to hide your emotions. Don't go into them, my wife died about a year ago. It was, grief, terrible. The advice was, keep yourself busy. Don't think about it. Stay with friends. And I said, no, here's for a reason. It's hard to sit with, but when you sit with it, you know what? It's the greatest gift ever, because nothing will open your heart quicker. And when your heart opens, you're going to make those great chemicals, and everything's going to change in your life. So it's the greatest gift you can have, being in that. But until you're ready for that, we'll do the other plan.
Sure.
Yeah.
Lee, thank you so much for everything you're doing, not just for everybody you work with. You've helped me tremendously. I'm excited to continue doing work with you. And thank you for coming on the show and teaching everybody about ways they can heal themselves.
Well, thanks, Jace. I really appreciate it. My goal is to help as many people as possible, and you've made that possible.